What's up? Welcome in. Hoge Jahns with you. I am back from Arizona. Johnsy, thanks for holding things down with the Fishman. Second episode last week. Good stuff.
It can be difficult sometimes with the Fishman, but we're here.
Yeah.
We persevered. He got into your CHGO chat yesterday.
Yeah, he does that sometimes.
He just tends to be everywhere sometimes, that Fishman.
He's everywhere. My text messages. And
always in the text messages. Always.
We love the Fishman. He did a great job filling in as I spent a couple extra days in Arizona, which was very nice, recharged, and diving into draft stuff. I had an incredibly productive day yesterday, John. Just hammering away at our CHGO draft board, and we got Nick Baumgardner coming on the pod today. I'm ready to go.
Like literally hammering? Like putting it up on the wall itself?
I mean, I had the national championship game on last night, but I was really working the entire time for the most part. It wasn't that exciting of a game.
Actually, so was I. It was a good game. Like San Diego State made it interesting for 5 minutes there in the second half, but like every UConn game I watched this year, like they jump out to a big lead, team fights back, and then here comes another big lead. Just by far the best team I've seen in the tournament this year.
Yeah, and my experience watching UConn was limited to the tournament, and every time I watched them, I kept thinking, how the hell did they lose 8 games in the Big East? Like, I need somebody to explain that to me, because that makes no sense, because they just looked unstoppable the whole tournament. So congrats to them. Congrats to the people that for some reason decided to take a pole and slam it through their building at school or whatever yesterday. I saw that going viral on Twitter last night. That always is
on some social media that you're on. You're on everything, Adam Hogue.
No, it was going viral that like immediately these fans celebrating just decided to take a giant pole and start damaging their campus. I just find that a very interesting way to celebrate. I always have, but
interesting. You call it interesting. I call it stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be nice here. It's just weird. Yeah, I'm so excited. The first thing I'm going to go do is destroy something. Okay, that's cool, man. I'm sure it would happen if the Bears ever win the Super Bowl too. So, we got a lot to talk about here. Nick Baumgardner jumping on with us here in a little bit. But Johns and speaking of the Fishman, you guys had a big story come out on The Athletic yesterday. I know you guys were working hard on it last week while we were in Arizona. I'm going to take people inside a little bit here, okay? I'm having a nice lunch here with Johnsy and Fish. I didn't even need to stay there. At that point, I already committed to going and finding my wife. And I sit and they both pull out their laptops and they're both working on this story. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, I'm about to eat this $30 salad or whatever the hell I ordered and move on with my day.
I think you got the hot chicken sandwich.
Yeah, whatever I got. I don't know. It wasn't very memorable.
Don't try to make yourself a health nut all of a sudden here. But but yes, thank you. We did work quite a bit on it. Every down minute there at the owners' meetings, we were plugging away on this bad boy.
So it was your inside look at the big trade that went down last month with the number 1 overall pick, Joe Person, who we had on the pod, of course, a couple weeks ago, breaking down the Panther side of it, and he was involved in the story too, bringing Scott Fitterer's side of the story. Very interesting stuff if you want both sides to the trade. And just what were your biggest takeaways from all the work you put into it?
Let me think about this. I want to say, like, I like just I kept returning to like where they are, like draft wise. Like, obviously Ryan Poles had a comfort going from 1 to 9. Where he felt in he calls them buckets, his value buckets, that there wasn't like a drop off from elite to the very good starter category. Like there's a good mixture of them there at 9. I like what Scott Fitterer said about not wanting to trade number 39 because he felt that's a good range to find, probably a plug and play starter, a second round pick starter, and how he resisted in giving that pick to Ryan Poles, and in return gave him another second-round pick. That was the sweetener of the deal. That's really what made the deal come to fruition. It was interesting to hear the draft in mind. Since we're going to have like a draft podcast this week and next week, it was interesting to hear like all of that come to mind or be such in mind, I guess, for Ryan Poles and Scott Fitterer as they went back and forth on this deal.
Yeah, it felt like 9 was sort of the limit, though, to where they still feel like they can get one of those good players. And it might even not even be a guarantee if for some reason 2 quarterbacks fall. There seems to be a little bit more, and we'll talk to Nick about this a little bit, I think, but there seems to be a little bit more of a consensus lately that Will Levis might fall. And then I think it's sort of a wild card maybe where Richardson goes. It seemed like early on there was a lot of, and maybe there still is, that he's going to go much higher than people think, and now that sort of seems to be the consensus. But anyway, it certainly seems like Ryan Poles feels confident that he's going to be able to get one of his quote-unquote blue players at number 9. But I also still feel like another trade back's possible.
Yeah. I felt that it was interesting that the 3 quarterbacks, they only met with 3 quarterbacks at the combine. Like, I thought it was interesting that Will Levis was left out, at least initially.
I thought that was interesting too.
In the Bears research, I thought that was telling, maybe in a sense that maybe, at least in the Bears evaluations, those are the top 3 quarterbacks. And I think if you ask around enough, there's different feelings or different evaluations than Will Levis.
Yeah, because my conclusion after reading not only what you guys wrote, but what Peter King wrote, what Albert Breer wrote, is that the meetings that happened with the quarterbacks, and also hearing like what Eberflus had to say and Ryan Poles had to say last week, my takeaway was that while they didn't do it publicly, they had committed to Justin Fields and trading the number 1 pick much, much earlier than the combine. Like they went to Indy with that being the plan, without a doubt. And so why would they meet with the quarterbacks? Well, part of the great reporting you guys had in that story was that, they did that essentially to get a feel, to help them get a feel on what kind of demand there was going to be for the number 1 pick. And Ryan Poles came away with it thinking, okay, this solidifies the fact or our move here to stick with Justin Fields. But these guys are impressive enough that we feel like there's going to be a flurry here of offers to trade this pick. But that being in mind, it's like, well, then why didn't you talk to Will Levis too? And that, I think that sort of speaks for itself in some ways.
Here's the quote from Ryan Poles on talking to the 3 quarterbacks. That would be Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson. Their interviews were very good. Mentally, they're in a really good place to talk ball and talk through the things they know about the game. You could tell football intelligence was not going to be an issue. I knew coming out of those, I can't read today. Knew coming out, if those guys interviewed really well, teams at that moment are going to be more motivated to get something done sooner rather than later. Let me repeat that since I can't read this morning.
Who wrote this stuff? My God.
I know. It's early. I haven't finished my coffee here, Adam Hoge. You're the one who wants to start at 8:45 in the morning now.
I know. I'm sorry.
I knew coming out, if those guys interviewed really well, teams at that moment are going to be more motivated to get something done sooner rather than later. I love that. Like, it's like extra research to feel good about something you want to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, it emboldened Ryan Poles to make that move. They liked all 3 guys. They did. But they liked them enough to know that other teams are going to like them, right? Like, that's my big takeaway there, that they felt that other teams were going to be proactive after that, and they found one in the Panthers.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Don't want to give it all away here on the pod, but if you haven't read it yet, you definitely should go check it out. There's also, an interesting nugget in there about how they landed on the draft compensation, because not surprisingly, the Bears wanted the Panthers earlier. 2nd-round pick. The Panthers didn't want to give that up, and so that's where the 2025 2nd-round pick came in. They essentially gave up 2 second-rounders instead of one in the somewhat distant future to not have to give up the earlier 2nd-round pick, and that's
sweeten the deal, as they call it.
The sweetener. That's right. That's how it was put in the story.
The sweetener, yes, to get over the finish line.
Yeah. Now, was it real sugar or artificial sweetener?
No, it's real.
Okay.
That's real. How did you feel about the Bears asking for Brian Burns and also Derek Brown?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, right? They need a 3 technique. They need pass rusher on the edge, and they need help for Justin Fields. Personally, based on who's available at what positions, I think they came away with the best option. I think when you look at the wide receiver market and free agency, not necessarily what's available in the draft, because I like what's available in the draft. You guys have heard me say this a million times. Rookie wide receivers take a while. And so to grab somebody who's still 25 years old and a seasoned vet at this point, who's already put up 1,100-yard seasons 3 times in the NFL, is just, it's better than the top rookie wide receiver in terms of getting, maybe not in terms of overall ceiling, but certainly in terms of helping Justin Fields in 2023. So I feel like that's the best case scenario. As good as Brian Burns is, I like that they came away with DJ Moore.
And I said this on your show yesterday, and I know the Panthers feel that way, that receiver can be an easier position to reload in. Like, I understand it. There's usually, especially in today's NFL, like, there's more of them. But this year, like this draft class, this free agency class, like DJ Moore is by far the best option. So if you're just reloading in this year, Ryan Poles found his way to get the best one.
And that's where I'm not sure I completely buy Scott Fitterer, in the where he justifies giving up DJ Moore instead of those other 2 guys. And it's in the piece, and he says that, I think it's easier to replace wide receiver. Maybe in most years, but here's the problem to me that goes against that. You're going to move up to number 1 and draft a quarterback. Who the hell is he throwing to this year? Like, that's what I would take issue to if I was in Carolina. Yeah, Adam Thielen, who's a good, solid player and will certainly help a young quarterback. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if I completely buy that as that's definitely the top guy he wanted to give up. It just doesn't seem to mix with, we're trading up to number 1 quarterback, and, oh, by the way, we're going to trade away a young, cost-effective wide receiver who could help this kid right away. The very reason why the Bears want him. That's tough to me.
Yes. So check out the story. It's on theathletic.com. A lot of details in there. Phone calls from soccer games where Ryan Poles and Scott Fitterer first met in Indianapolis. Some of those details are in there. So if you haven't read it yet, check it out. It's on theathletic.com. Up on the top on the NFL page.
Yeah, it's a really good piece. So theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns. All right, let's bring in Nick Baumgardner, who covers the Lions. You've heard him on the show many times, but he's also, one of the Athletic's biggest draft writers, and he's been on for that too, which is why he's on now, because it is April. It is draft month. What's going on, Nick?
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Good. Nick, what's going on, man?
Not much. Good story, Adam, by the way. I was hearing you guys talking about it. Very good.
Thank you. A little draft capital.
Very good. I liked it a lot, yeah.
What do you think?
That was a tough trade for the Bears, man. That was a tough move, I thought. But, yeah.
Really? Why do you think so?
I thought that this year, and I think I told you guys this, like, the quarterbacks this year are good, but it's not a generational class. Next year's, is what we would consider closer to that. And I just thought, like, to get that thing traded for the right value, you were going to have somebody convinced that they needed a guy, right? And, like, man, that's easier said than done sometimes. So I thought it was well done by Ryan Poles.
So that's interesting, Nick, too, because I think that what you just captured right there is exactly what Ryan Poles sort of gives off with the anxiety and the anxiousness of making the trade. Because it's like, I think he was sitting there in that moment going, I could wait, maybe get the Texans involved. Maybe there's a chance to pull out more, but there's still that sort of uncertainty, especially as a team that's sitting there looking at these quarterbacks going, no, our guy's better right now.
100%.
Like, it it's kind of a catch-22 to be sitting there looking at it like that way. And I think that's ultimately why, like, look, this is a great offer from the Panthers. Just take it and pull it off.
Just
now.
take it, man. Like, that's what it was about. It was like, because I'd heard this stuff and talked with Kevin and some of those guys, right, about like maybe they'll trade twice and all this. I'm like, just trade it. Just trade it. It doesn't matter what it is. I remember a couple years ago, this reminded me of the death knell of Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia in Detroit when they came out the one year when they had 3 and they refused to talk about moving Stafford or drafting a quarterback. I'm like, well, now you guys can't move your pick. You're stuck. You can't do anything. And you have to draft Okudah. And it's like you had to move the pick, right? And it's like you can't paint yourself into any corners. Just trade it. Don't worry about – you can't get hosed, but it was like just trade it. And I thought that was a decent return. So all things good.
Yeah, give yourself some flexibility.
Right.
Now you have 2 first-round picks next year if things don't work out for that QB class, the escape hatch.
And you can do whatever you want again. I mean, it's like, and they're not going to be ready next year, the Bears. I mean, they have a plan, but it's like it's going to be a minute. So I like where they're at right now. I like it better than 6 months ago. That's for sure.
Yeah, they seem to be on a much better track. As are the Lions. So make sure you're following Nick on Twitter at Nick Baumgardner. You can also hear him on One of These Years. That is the name of the Lions podcast. Maybe 2023 is that year. We'll see. But we want to bring you on to talk about the draft and first of all, the incredible work you guys did on the new top 100.
Oh yeah, thanks.
That dropped. First of all, it just looks awesome.
Doesn't it look cool? Yeah.
Yeah. You pull up. If people haven't checked this out yet, please do. You pull up the Athletic app, and it like seamlessly
it's really
works.
Neat. Yeah.
Works within the app to click on players by position. You click on their name, all this information pops up. So first, congratulations on all the work you guys put into that to make it as awesome as it is. And just what were some of your general takeaways from putting it all together?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the takeaways, again, as we've seen, you see this every year, and I actually wrote about this a little bit today because we just rounded up the consensus board, which is everybody else's sort of top 100, is the guy, number one, it's Dane is the best in the business. There's nobody better. That's Dane's top 100, and we fleshed it out. But like Dane had Christian Gonzalez, Lucas Van Ness, guys like that way up, way higher than everybody else, however many months ago it was last summer. And now here we are, and they're still here. And it's the great example of the traits always win out, especially in today's NFL. And a guy like Van Ness is the great example. When we started looking at everybody else's boards in December, knowing full well that NFL teams thought Lucas Van Ness was a first-round draft pick, there were so many people that were like, this is like a second-round, third-round pick. I'm like, no way. Like, there is no chance. If you just look at the measurements, because they were basing it off of, right, like how much he did or didn't play, how much he was used. And I think that the more you look at it, and teams are ever getting smarter and smarter about really looking at full context within these colleges and everything that happens. So I just think that, every time when we get this close to the draft or this close to the beast coming out, because I think that's next week, I always kind of chuckle at how many times Dane's top 100 really doesn't move over the last 6 months. It does, but it's like there's a lot of it that really doesn't. And it's like he was right about so many of these guys when we talked about them last June. And, here we are, and they're still here.
The Van Ness thing strikes me as, like one of the critiques is, well, the guy wasn't a starter. He didn't start.
Right. Yeah.
Years
he just was a rotational guy.
What I would tell you, Nick, is if a team can get over the fact that a certain quarterback didn't start to his senior year at a certain school in one of the Carolinas and make him the second overall pick, a team can get over defensive end with those types of traits.
At least it was his junior year, for
right, man. Like,
junior year, okay. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know where I'm going with this. But yes, a guy like Lucas Van Ness seems to. I mean, he's got like top 15 like written all over.
Oh yeah. There's no way. No way he makes it out of the top 18. It's like one of those guys where you're like, there's no way, right? He's never going to fall. And then, yes, everybody agrees after they start watching. So, yeah, pretty cool.
Okay, so you get Dane's updated list. Anybody like strike you like maybe at the bottom where maybe some of the more notable changes would happen?
Yeah, some at the bottom. I believe he bumped in a couple guys there. Zavala, the guard from, I believe, is it Stanford or is it Arizona? I can't remember which school he went to. He's a nice player. And then The other one, the safety from Illinois, Martin,
Yes.
that he bumped in there, he had a terrific combine, and it was another reminder to me. Dana and I, we talked at the Senior Bowl about how many good football players Illinois had just this last year, just on defense. We talked so much about Witherspoon. People have talked a lot about Chase Brown, Sidney Brown, and it's like it just keeps going. There's so many guys. Kirby Joseph just came out. It's been a really good stretch for everything that's come out of Illinois football the last couple of years, which is, we don't say that every year, but like that was a reminder again to see Quan Martin moving up there at the bottom. Jair Brown, the kid from Penn State, the safety that I think a lot of people were down on because he's not a great athlete. He's one that I know that Dane was higher on than most people, and I tend to agree. I think with that, the ball skills, I think if you really watched some of the combine drills, he sort of showed those off there. So, yeah, it was interesting. It's always interesting at the bottom to see which guys. I don't think he put Carl Brooks in, the kid from Bowling Green, and that's the one that I keep pounding the table for. But maybe,
maybe
you're
very high on him, Carl.
Yeah, I like
him.
Brooks
He's
too.
really
Yeah,
good.
he really stood out the Senior Bowl. And we have a kid from Carmel that he's starting corner at Bowling Green. So every once in a while, I would turn on
nice.
sometimes I'd turn on a Bowling Green game this year, and
he's awesome.
And then you'd see Carl Brooks dominating things as well. So just a quick note on Illinois too, since you brought that up. I mean, I want to give Brett Bielema some credit. Like that's when he was at Wisconsin, like he pumped out pros like
all that the time, man. Yeah,
because there's just he and his coaching staff, they're really good at developing kids that maybe are 3-star recruits, and they make them 5-star recruits by the time that they're graduating. They go off to the NFL. And then I thought, like, remember when he left Arkansas, what did he do? He went to the NFL. He went to work for Bielema. He was with the Giants. Like, he got NFL experience that he didn't have before. And so I really thought going back to Illinois that would be, whether or not it resulted, Big Ten championships for Illinois, I'm not surprised at all to see these kids come out, and then sort of even surprised during the pre-draft process where you're like, oh, wow, like there's some pros here. And I think that's showing right now.
And they're getting both too, because they're getting the athletes and they're getting a guy like Witherspoon who, he didn't test. And I think some people were like, well, maybe that'll hurt him. But I don't think that's hurt him at all. I think that, to your point, Bielema is finding kids that play positions that NFL teams and traits that NFL teams want. Like, he is a football player. He is a tough fit. Every guy that you talk to, I don't care what he runs. I watch his tape. He's a tape guy, right? So like those are Illinois guys. And that's cool that's happening. We're getting some Illinois guys now. It's a thing a little bit.
You mentioned that the consensus big board 5.0, right? 5.0.
I think so. This was the 5th one, I believe. Yeah.
Came out today. Can you
so this is different from the top 100 that's Dan.
Yeah,
right? I just want to clarify. Yeah.
This is where Austin Mock, who does all of our like betting models and all of the a lot of the analytics, he puts like, I don't know how many, but a bunch of like from PFF and from all over the place, reputable ones. I think Dane goes over the list, and or Chris Burke as well. And then he pumps them into his program and spits out the average of every player. So it's like, I think it's like 15 top 100s averaged out or something like that, including Dane's. And Dane's always ends up moving it the most because people end up following whatever Dane does when he resets the list. But yeah.
So where do you see maybe the
I wonder how many teams do that now.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Like, the Dane's top
See what
100.
Dane's doing. I think it's more than a few. Yeah,
we got to move this guy up a little bit.
They're all printing the beast on Monday.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So where's like the biggest differences? Like where would you see them? Yeah.
It's this year, and it's been that way the whole year. It's receiver and corner. I think most people on the outside they're just too high on these receivers, and they're too low on the corners. And I think that's been held up pretty true the whole way. I think they've come up on the corners a little bit, but I just don't think you have a receiver in this class that is going in the top 12. I would be surprised a little bit if there's one in the top 20. And they're nice players. Like Jackson Smith-Njigba's a nice player. I like him a lot. I like Quentin Johnston a lot. Addison, right? But they all have questions that are kind of like notable, and they're not little things. There's no Devonta Smith in this class. There's none of that. And I think people sometimes want to see what guys did in college again, and they want to, project, and it's like, it's not there. The corners, however, Witherspoon, Joey Porter, Gonzalez, Deontay Banks from Maryland. There's like 6 corners, maybe 7 or 8 actually, who probably could have first-round grades here. So I think that's been interesting to see. The receiver market continues to get weirder and weirder because the depth of the class is fine. You're going to get good receivers 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, but the top of it is not great. And I think that that's kind of like a trend. We're kind of maybe going to see that a little bit more and more here.
All right. You love Bijan Robinson.
I do.
And he's a name that keeps coming up. I feel like with Bears fans, probably fans of most teams.
Yeah,
I think there's just sort of this acceptance these days that it's just not worth taking a running back in the top 10, even though it happens periodically. And of course it did with Saquon Barkley, but there also seems to be this consensus that like, yeah, but this Bijan Robinson guy is pretty damn good. And he could help us. So where do you fall on where he makes sense for which team to maybe make that leap? Because I think at this point he will go in the first round. It's going to be which team, sort of bucks the trend and does what most people say you shouldn't.
Yeah, I think that it's a matter of I keep putting him with the Lions, and Lions fans get upset, but I think that's a really good fit. They just signed Montgomery. I think that you're going to get Bijan on a rookie contract. You're going to get, I think a team like that, Chicago, maybe. It depends on how ready you are, because that's really what it is. Are you ready to compete? Could you put him in and really get going? Because you don't want to waste time on his rookie deal. You want to get the most out of it, I think, if you're going to make a move like that. So I think that that's really how I kind of look at it. Teams that are in that, if you have an okay back, then you could use an upgrade, or you are a team that runs the ball. Atlanta, I've kind of maybe looked at and said they run the ball really well. Maybe they could do some things with him. Dallas, of course, is one everybody points to. But really, like the big thing here is, how good is he? Is he generational or not? And I think that when you bucket these guys, like Saquon is a generational back. I don't know if Bijan is quite there. I don't know if he's quite as good as Saquon, but he's certainly the best we've seen since Saquon. And he's like a shade under that, right? Like, I think he's definitely worthy of, like, if you took him in the top 15, I don't think you'd be nuts, because you're going to get a stud for his whole rookie contract. He's going to be able to carry a heavy load, in the backfield. And the receiving stuff that this guy does, we haven't even seen it really yet, because Texas really didn't use him as much as they probably could have. And I think that there's a lot in modern offenses that he could do, especially the way some of these coaches scheme it up. So very interested to see where he falls.
I was going to say, with the spread of the Shanahan influences, there's a lot of teams returning to running the ball because the quarterback play.
Right.
After the top, it drops off. It's what it is. It's just there's more good running backs than there are good, capable
and linemen.
Yes. It helps. Exactly. Right. That's been a concern for a while now. And I do think, Nick, that like the Bears are going to be in on running backs. I'm not sure if that's going to happen at 9, because they got 2 or 3 really good offensive tackles sitting there.
Exactly. Yeah.
But after that, like, who are your favorite running backs day 2, day 3?
Man, this is actually a really good running back class too. This is, you got
I like it a lot.
It is really good. A kid like Gibbs from Alabama, like I think he's 20 on Dane's board overall. Bijan is 6, I think, at the end of the day, and Gibbs is 20. And every time I go through mock, I'm like, you're gonna be able to get Gibbs at like the bottom of the 2nd round. You're gonna be able to get Tyjae Spears, the kid from Tulane, who was awesome at the Senior Bowl. I think like bottom of the 2nd, 3rd round. Eric Gray, who is a kid from Oklahoma, who's really he's not a 3-down back. He's probably more of a 3rd down guy and a scat guy, but a really good player and a really good weapon. And a guy in most years, I would think he'd be like Devin Achane, the kid from A&M, would be another one in this. I think in most years, they'd be like 2nd round picks. Those guys could be day 3 picks in this draft. And so I'm very curious to see where those dudes fall, because there's a lot of good backs in this class. They're not bums. You're going to be able to find a guy who can help you, I think, well into probably into at least round 4, maybe round 5.
Yeah, I think even maybe in round 6, like
maybe, yeah. It's a really good class.
Like, I would even say,
O'Shawn Johnson, the kid that Bijan played with, another one, like in Texas.
And I was watching the East-West Shrine game, and I don't have those notes in front of me right now, but there was like 3 running backs in that game where I was like, that guy's got some wiggle. And one was from Fresno State. I don't even have it in front of me. Evan Hall from Northwestern is a guy who I'm not saying he's going to, be a lead back in the NFL, but he's somebody who you can draft late and put in there, and he's going to get you some hard yards. So
they're all like that position's evolving, and those guys, it's survival, right? Like the league said, we no longer need the downhill powertrain, so figure it out. And now you've got guys who can do a lot of stuff, and I think that's pretty cool to see. It's like tight end, positions evolving, and teams are responding to it.
And I like what you're saying too, like in terms of the team being in the right situation.
Yeah.
For it. Like, Detroit stands out because
they're ready.
Division, yes, they're ready with a good offensive line. And I feel like there's a few teams that just might be ready.
Minnesota has been one that's like, even with Dalvin Cook, I think that they were in on Montgomery. Somebody had written that the other day, that I think ESPN reported that maybe, that Minnesota was interested even with Dalvin. So like, there's a lot. Dallas, of course, is the one, but there's a lot of teams right there that you're like, you just put one more weapon on offense, because that's what he is in your arsenal, and you're ready to go, and he could be the difference. Like, there's a lot of teams suddenly, if you look at it that way. And I think he's the best playmaker, right, in the draft, outside of being a quarterback, and probably even maybe you could include him in some of these quarterbacks in terms of that too. So I think that's what you're looking at with Bijan.
All right. So since we're on the running back conversation, how was the Montgomery signing received in Detroit? I mean, he seems just like a perfect fit for what Dan Campbell's trying to do. And it sounds like he really wanted to be there, because, some of the stuff we've reported from last week is that the Bears were competitive and really felt like, they didn't want to lose him.
They want to lose him, yeah.
And I think they were kind of surprised that they did.
Yeah, I think it happened quickly because it was a confusing thing. Jamal Williams, of course, who was like the spiritual captain, everything here. He was the heartbeat of the team. I know they wanted to bring him back, but at the right price. And I think Jamal tried to dare them to, go higher. And I think he dared them and to see if you have a backup plan. I don't think you have a backup plan, and their backup plan was to go get Montgomery. And I think it came together. Now, there may have been backdoor conversations on this, knowing Brad Holmes a little bit. He may have had that set up and ready to go, knowing Jamal was going to counter with a number they didn't want to pay him. But people were a little surprised at first, because I think they would have rather seen Jamal, because it was like they didn't want to lose him because he was such a, liked person. But I think the more I kept telling people, I'm like, well, this is an upgrade, folks, as a player. He's a 2 years younger version of Jamal Williams as a player, and probably better at that. So, I thought it was actually a really good deal. I thought they got him at a good price. That's what I was surprised at, actually, frankly. And to hear you guys say that Chicago, it makes sense then that Chicago wanted to keep, and maybe he wanted to change the scenery one way or the other. But I thought him and Herbert together were a terrific tandem, and I'm curious to see what the Lions do with him, because Swift could be that guy, but I don't know. It might not be. It might be one of these guys we just talked about in the draft. So I'm curious to see where it goes. But yeah, I think they're super happy with him for sure.
Let's stick with these divisional storylines for a little bit. There's still one looming out there, guys. Aaron Rodgers going to New York. I know how that's being talked about here in Chicago. There may or not be a parade later, but what's going on in Detroit?
Yeah, they're ready,
Rodgers,
man. I think that when they beat him at the end of the year last year in Lambeau, people were like, he's done. Get him out of here. We've got the team. We're ready to go. I think the mood when it was like revealed that after that game, like immediately, when it seemed like, what's Rodgers doing? Why isn't he giving his jersey away? What the hell is happening here? And it's like, oh, maybe he's leaving. And I think the mood in Detroit suddenly turned from like, we're probably a year away to like, no, we need to go get it right now. Right now. We can go win a playoff game and win the division right now, because Minnesota's not that good and Chicago's still building. And before Fields gets fully operational, I think is kind of the Detroit mood, is like, there's a small window right here before he's like really ready. And I think that they're like, let's go get it, because fair enough, because it's wide open if he leaves. And I think that seems to be what's happening. I don't know what's going on. It's been a month now since he emerged from the darkness there, but if he leaves, what are they going to do? I mean, they're done. They got to start over.
See, there's a segment of Bears fans though that, and I think it's definitely a minority, but there's some that wish he'd come back for one more year.
Just so they could get him.
Just so they could send him out with a loss. Basically, do what the Lions
That's why the
did.
Lions fans were like, we're good. Get him out.
And I keep telling them, I'm like, I get the sentiment, but it ain't happening, dude.
Don't do it.
He's going to keep beating the Bears because that's what he does. Good for the Lions, though, for getting that big win at Lambeau to send them out that way. It was, I mean, it was very enjoyable to watch. I'm not
felt like
lie.
they were representing the entire division there for a half at least. They were like, let's get this bum out of here and move on, right? But we'll see. We'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, the Bears got to celebrate Robbie Gould beating him in the playoffs.
There you go, man.
A couple of years ago.
Right? They seem to celebrate a lot of teams beating
Aaron.
Packers.
Yeah.
Well, Robbie kind of counts, right?
Well, Robbie
He's
counts.
here
He counts
forever.
for sure. Yeah. He's I think of him and the Bears together. So yeah,
Yes.
that works.
Yeah. Okay. Kind of counts.
There were a lot of Bears fans who were Lions fans, though, in Week 18.
That's right. Yeah.
No doubt about it.
You're welcome to the board.
All right, Johns, what else should we conquer here with the draft?
All right,
before we let you
yeah.
go?
Any other positions? Like I'm looking at like tight end, just in terms of if you're a team who needs maybe some offensive weaponry and you're looking at some of the deeper positions. We talked about running back, like
Right.
where are you stacking these tight ends and how early are you like getting in on this class?
Yeah, this is a historic, it will be, I think, at the end of the day, a historic tight end class. And I think that you could see one go as early as 15. I mean, Green Bay could take one for sure. And I think we could see as many as 3, maybe 4 go in the first round. It wouldn't be shocking to me because kind of like we touched on earlier, the position has changed. You look at these guys now, Kincaid from Utah is a freaky athlete that I think, 10 years ago, I almost wonder if he would have been shuffled over to defense and said, you're going to be an edge, and Mayer is a traditional tight end, but Darnell Washington, 10 years ago, you're a tackle, son, you're not playing tight end. And
it's
I
like
think
they passed that rule. So
right. And so
you're zero.
Things are changing. And the 0 rule, right? Things are changing and people they're okay with like letting athletes be athletes. And I think that you're starting to see, Musgrave from Oregon State is just, I think he's like one of the fastest guys at that size that's ever been timed. I mean, it's like, that's the type of stuff. Tucker Kraft, even, the small school kid. I mean, Luke Schoonmaker from Michigan in any other year would be like one of the top end tight ends in this class. And he's like the 7th best guy and he's still a good player. He's top 100 prospect, but it's like, there's a lot of really freaky athletes that through their college processes are sticking at tight end. And it's like, that didn't used to happen. They used to move off it and it's changing. And I think that that again is another thing that we're going to see continue in the future years here.
Yeah. I like the tight ends. I think
they're great.
Yeah, you can go pretty deep, even like Josh Wiley from Cincinnati.
Miami. Laporta from Iowa is awesome.
Yeah.
I love him. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's this type of so how many of these guys go though in the top 2 rounds? Because
that's a good question.
There's you just don't see that many tight ends go that early, but
they're so good that I think that you could see a rush, and I think that you could see 6 go in that, in that stretch. It wouldn't be shocking. 5, I think that it feels like if it's not 5, that would almost be kind of surprising, right? Like, so because all those there's at least 5 or 6 guys that you'd give a first or second round grade to, I think is what we would say here, which probably doesn't happen often either. It certainly doesn't happen. So I think it's one of those things. We'll see if it's just a one-off, but I don't think it is. I think it's something that we'll see more, maybe not as much every year like this, but more guys in that conversation. Like Kyle Pitts, everybody looked at Kyle Pitts as a weird outlier, and maybe so, but I don't think a complete outlier.
Nick, last one for you, because I'm not sure if we're going to get you before the draft. Who are your favorite, let's say 2 or 3 prospects who don't play running back for the University of Texas?
My favorite 2 or 3 prospects. Well, I mean, I love Anthony Richardson. I'll give you that one. That was one that I have refused to back off on for some time. I think Will Anderson is going to be, he doesn't get talked about. And it's one of those things that I don't know why, because everyone's obsessed with quarterbacks. Everyone's with this. Everyone said that about Richardson, or you talk about Bijan. I think Will Anderson is going to be a generational type player when this is all said and done, like runaway with rookie of the year type stuff. And everybody will be like, why weren't we talking about him more when all this is over with? We mentioned those corners. Darnell Wright would be another one. The tackle from Tennessee had a terrific Senior Bowl and a terrific end to his career at Tennessee. He was a 5-star recruit who really didn't start great, but got better and better and better. And I definitely think he could be a guy that he's gotten. I've heard people say maybe in the 20s for him, maybe in the early 20s for him. I don't know. But yeah, that's a few guys there that have been good. Also, Double A from Northwestern. Tommy.
I got you. Adetomawa Adebore.
I love that guy. That guy's the best. Yeah, he's the best.
Yeah, he could be interesting potentially for the Bears in the second round if he still hangs
I don't know
around.
where he's going to go, but he's a freaky guy.
Yeah, Dane had him all the way up to what, 79? 70s?
Yeah. And I think some people are way higher than that. I've heard some people say, in the 50s with him. I'm like, geez, okay.
And it only takes one team. It only takes one team.
Yeah.
So, hey, I do have one more for you, Lions base, because one of these, one of the things that happened with the Bears moving back is now the Lions pick ahead of them at number 6. They also have 18. Where are you leaning? What they should do? What they will do? Is there any chance they draft a quarterback?
I think that not in the first round. I would be very, very surprised. On the bordering of stunned if they took a quarterback in the first round. I think that a developmental somewhere along the way is probably needed and maybe something that they'll target. But in the first round, on those first 2 picks, I think 18 depends on what they do at 6. I think that they'll be active. I think they're going to, if they like a guy, and that's why I've thought about, are they going to be in the market to get up there to 3 with Arizona and take Will Anderson? That's something that they have the assets to do that. Last year, we saw them move up to take Jamison Williams. We've seen Brad Holmes trade up before. Colton and I have both talked about this. I don't think the Lions are going to be quiet. I think they're going to make some sort of move with something with one of those 2 picks. I doubt we'll see them just sit there. But if they were to sit there and just go 6 and 18, it wouldn't shock me at all if they went just edge at 6, like Tyree Wilson, and then a corner at 18, and then just said, defense, we're ready to go. We're going to take what we have on offense and try to make the playoffs here.
Well, they're the odds-on favorite to win the division right now, right?
I think that they're in a good spot. It's that was a really hard rebuild, and I feel like they're either on schedule, which would have been a really hard schedule to keep, or slightly ahead of it, which is kind of wild. But other things had to happen too. Like Rodgers had to fall off and everything else, and the Bears didn't need to recover as their rebuild needed to go slower as it has. So I think that they're in a good spot right now.
Well, one of these years, right?
Yeah, one of these years. Just a playoff win would be all that. We'll
that
start
counts.
with that. Yeah,
that counts, right?
Start with that.
Same here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Been a while. Yep. That's one of these years, the Lions podcast that Nick hosts. Make sure you're following him on Twitter at Nick Baumgardner. The draft coverage is excellent as well. Thanks so much for jumping on with us.
You bet, fellas. Anytime.
Thanks, Nick.
Hey, by now you probably know our next partner, and it's a really cool product. Let's talk about Athletic Greens. If you're looking to get better gut health, more energy, or a stronger immune system in a really easy, natural way, you've got to check out Athletic Greens. I'm sure you'll agree that most of us are not huge fans of having to take a bunch of pills or vitamins in the morning. But with Athletic Greens, you can get rid of all of those extra vitamin bottles and finally make some room in your cabinet. Athletic Greens is an all-in-one solution, and you'll really enjoy getting your daily vitamins. So what is this stuff? With 1 scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All of those things. Right now is the time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Adams. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/Adams, plural, to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Fun conversation with him.
Oh, Nick's the best.
Enjoyed that. All right.
Well, NFC North guys stick together.
Yeah, especially when it's against Aaron Rodgers.
Something like that.
I think. Who I don't know. What if this thing is dragging on? Is this
Nah,
gonna
it's
go all the way
gotta-
up to the
like,
draft?
That's the rumblings, right? That's what they're saying on ESPN and the NFL Network.
Well, it kind of felt that way when it didn't happen right away.
What do you think Jordan Love is doing and feeling right now? Just let's go, get out of here. I want to host workouts with the guys in Florida.
Yeah, he's probably feeling the same way Aaron Rodgers once felt when Brett Favre wouldn't leave. Now, this is a little different, though, because it seems like Rodgers is on board and they just got to work out the compensation. But, yeah, I mean, remember, Rodgers went through that one whole offseason thinking it was his team. They went through OTAs. He was the starter. And then all of a sudden in the summer, Favre's like, I'm coming back.
Yeah.
Like, that would be the worst.
It can't happen.
Yeah.
You know what, though? We've covered him for a bit. There's some twists and turns in that guy's career.
And but that's the thing. There still might be. It just seems so weird. Good. I will say this. Good for Brian Gutekunst last week in Arizona for finally. He's not the type of guy to, get in a argument, through the media with one of his players. But it was beyond time that someone with the Packers organization had to kind of stand up for some of the stuff that Rodgers has been saying, because, I heard some of this stuff that he didn't go into all the details when he talked to reporters last week, but this idea of it really being hard to get a hold of Aaron Rodgers this offseason. I had heard some of that stuff in Indy, as far as even Gutekunst flying out to go see Rodgers and not being able to meet with them. So it was beyond time, I thought, for the Packers GM to be like, come on, dude. You're going on McAfee and you're saying all these things like we're the bad guys. It's like, you got to, it might not be perfect, but you got to accept some responsibility for this situation.
And he's not. And your GM should not have to fly across the country to stalk you.
Right.
To wait you out.
Yes.
It's like he's like a reporter now sitting in a lobby somewhere trying to, cut you off as you go from one place to another.
Right. And yeah, that's beyond crazy to me. So, for Rodgers to come out and be like, well, I wish they had said this. I wish they had said that, they're trying to talk to you, dude. He's an interesting human being and probably always will be, but he's the AFC's problem now.
Soon enough.
Yeah. Hopefully. All right. Fun episode. Enjoyed talking to Nick, and a lot of great stuff on The Athletic right now for you to consume. Johnson's story, the top 100 with Dane Brugler, which again is right there in the app for you, and awesome to just be able to click through and read all of it. And then, of course, the consensus big board 5.0 out today. Any final thoughts? Anything we missed?
No. A lot of draft conversation coming up, and definitely check out the consensus big board, Dane's list. Yeah, it's all going to be there. The Beast is coming out soon. So it's draft month. We're in top 30 season now with everybody visiting teams.
Yes, like Jalen Carter, but he's only meeting with the top 10.
Yes.
He was at Hal's Hall.
He was not alone, I should say, by the way.
What does that mean? Like other players?
There are other players there with him.
Oh, like other top 30 visits?
Yes.
Oh, is that kind of normal to have like?
I don't know. I think I told this story before. Like Jermaine Edmonds.
Yeah.
I was hanging out with Ted Phillips that day for a story. Yeah. Pat myself on the back, whatever. And he came in and said hello, but he was by himself. I think all teams do it differently. What are you grabbing there? You gonna make fun of me now?
Don't care.
I know. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's just one thing I still remember sitting across a table with Ted Phillips, interviewing him, and Jermaine Edmonds just happens to walk in.
That's
hey guys.
Yeah.
Now you're just starting middle linebacker.
That happens every once in a while in the spring. Like that happened with some Penn State player one year. Like there's just like someone walking around Hal's Hall in Penn State gear, and I'm like, that guy looks familiar.
Yeah. And
it turned out to be one of the visits. It happens. Can't remember his name now, so must not have been that good of a player.
Adrian Amos.
No,
Almost mispronounced his name there. Adrian
It
Amos.
was a defensive lineman. want to say.
Michael Haynes.
Not Anthony Adams. Would have known right away who Anthony Adams is, for sure.
Yes. You don't like my Michael Haynes reference?
No, I did. Just didn't really have much to say about it.
Yeah, didn't have much to do.
Yeah, exactly.
didn't do much.
What else? Go ahead. I'm listening.
I think that's about it, Matt. We're out of here. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the show today. Nick was fun to talk to, and we got plenty more draft coverage coming your way the rest of the month. I should also say on CHGO, we're going to start doing some positional preview shows. We've been working on our draft board. Spent all day yesterday working on offensive linemen. From a fit standpoint, what the Bears are doing. So we got plenty coming your way there as well. Make sure you're following us at allchgo.com. Follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. Merch up on obviousshirts.com. Please like the show on YouTube. Hit subscribe if you consume it that way. If you're an old-fashioned podcast listener, we, of course, still love you guys very much and appreciate it if you'll give us a 5-star review. And rate and review the pod as always. And most importantly, tell a friend, tell a Bears fan, hey, this is cool Bears podcast you need to listen to, especially with the NFL draft heating up and the Bears are going to be in the mix. It's going to be a fun month. We're going to be here. Well, except for Johns. He's going on vacation next week. But
True.
I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have the fish man come back.
He'll be texting you about it.
Yeah. No, I have some fun ideas planned for next week too. And then of course we're still a few weeks out from the draft. So we're here. We appreciate you being here, and we will talk to you later on in the week.
See ya.